Hey, jerks. How you all doing today? Welcome back to the show. Had a great show the other night with Turtle Boy late night. I'm still suffering the effects. It was a late night. I haven't had as much sleep this week. There's so much going on with Karen Reed. The Sally Port, we've been talking about that for a long time. That's coming up in the motion to dismiss for Karen Reed. Also, this jury tampering thing. We have mentioned that a couple times, but we haven't really got into it. We're going to talk a lot more about that in the upcoming days. It's going to be a crazy week next week with a bunch of Karen Reed hearings plus Turtle Boy. He's also got a motion to dismiss hearing on Wednesday at 2 p.m. So there's a Tuesday, Wednesday, Friday. It looks like court hearings. The prosecution looks like they want to delay some of this on the Karen Reed side. We'll see what happens there. There's a lot happening. I want to thank Mazza Media for having myself and Brian LTL and Brian from Las Vegas Cops and a bunch of other folks last night to raise some money for Karen Reed. Phenomenal evening last night. We raised a lot of money for the Karen Reed Defense Fund. Thank everybody. Got some big shows coming up on Sunday morning or Sunday around noon. I think it's like noonish, 12:45 maybe. Earlier show, Sunday afternoon. I'm going to have Ernie Nan Gallagher back on the show. Working a lot of upcoming shows. Having an issue with my camera. I thought I Mickey Moused it and taped it together to keep it in place. It kind of tilted a little bit today. Hopefully it lasts throughout the rest of the show. I may have to actually invest in more equipment to work that out. But everything's looking good here. Everything's good. I got this great guest here tonight that people heard him call in. I don't know how many days, maybe it was like 5 nights ago, maybe a week ago. It was recent. He did phenomenal. He just called in at the end of a show with Abby and cut just the phone call, put it out as a video. It's very popular video. People loved him on the show. He's a retired North Carolina state highway patrolman for decades. He did tens of thousands of responses to car crashes, auto accidents. He's a retired police officer, retired North Carolina State Highway Patrolman. Some people question, is he real? Hey, he just showed me his all his documentation on camera. Just showed me his uniform, his emblem. He showed me all his documentation. I know that this gentleman is a real retired North Carolina State Highway Patrolman. He's got no incentive to come up on the show except that he's interested in this. He just like the Betero stuff. He is interested in discussing this case. He's not getting paid to be here. He's got no personal connection to this case, but he's watched and he's seen a lot of irregularities related to the investigation, how this was handled, which is what brought us a lot of us into this. He's got the same reservations, but he's got decades of experience responding to auto accidents, to these types of pedestrian auto accidents as well. And he knows that something's not right here. And he's going to basically his goal, I think, tonight is to give us an idea of what he would do and what North Carolina State Highway Patrol would do if they responded to a call like the John O'Keefe situation, how he would handle it and how North Carolina would handle this type of situation and what doesn't make sense in the investigation here. Immediately, we did this last night with Brian from Las Vegas Cops too. He had a lot to say last night, like he always does, about what's not right about the John O'Keefe situation. So I'm very excited and happy to bring him up. Again, he's a retired North Carolina State Highway Patrolman. The other night I called him Brosco. I think tonight I'm going to call him just North Carolina or Carolina. I like that, or maybe NC State. What do you guys think? I think I like Carolina. I think that's easy. Let's bring up Carolina. He's, like I said, he's a retired North Carolina State Highway Patrolman. Hello, sir. How you doing tonight?
Hey, Mike. I'm doing good. Thanks for having me on.
Did I get anything incorrect with that introduction tonight? Do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself? And if I did get anything wrong, let me know.
No. You were correct. I did retire with 30 years of service with North Carolina Highway Patrol. I got a Bachelor of Science degree in criminal justice. I worked the road my entire career. And basically, I would say close to 80% of my job was investigating motor vehicle crashes. So I'm very familiar with how it's done, when it should be done, and especially in fatalities. The steps that you have to go a little bit further in fatalities than you do as versus a car that runs off the road to the right and hits a tree. So there's a lot of more investigation you have to do, especially when it's a hit and run. So we can discuss that and go from there.
Excellent. I just got a comment in the chat. They said Patriots quarterback Drake May is from North Carolina. I didn't know that. Did you know that?
He played at North Carolina in Chapel Hill. That's correct.
Oh wow, he's a. I watched him now play some football this year. He's a good football player, isn't he?
He was a good college quarterback too. So I hadn't kept up much with him in the pros, but he was a good quarterback at Carolina.
I'm looking forward to seeing what he does this year with the Patriots. It's great to hear you. People are all, I think everyone from around the country, but especially us Massachusetts folks, we're loving your accent. We enjoy your. Can I call it a southern drawl? Like, how do you describe your accent compared to us holes up here in Massachusetts?
Yeah, I would say it's very different from being in Massachusetts. We talk a little bit slower. When I was in college, my one of my roommates was from Connecticut, and I had to constantly tell him, "Dude, you need to slow down. We don't talk that fast down here, you know." So
Yeah, it's funny because where I grew up in Massachusetts, we had it was kind of country. Like it's funny, like I would all yuppies the town I grew up in, but it used to be very country. A lot of trailers, a lot of hunting, a lot of fishing, and so I'm very familiar with some of the accents, even up in Massachusetts. You know, we had our own town accent.
right, right. Well, some of them is to me, it's hard to understand because they're talking too fast, and I have to rewind it, listen to it 2 or 3 times. So
Yes. You sound very clear tonight. I love that you joined us on StreamYard because I was having some phone issues, and you sound so clear tonight, and I'm so thankful that you jumped up on here on the StreamYard tonight. So tell us, how many car accidents have you responded to? Because you gave us a number that the other night.
yeah, it was close to maybe 14,000 over my career. I worked the second busiest county in the state. There were times when I worked third shift from 12A to 6A. I was the only trooper working this county. So, you know, we were short, and especially when it snows, I might do 10 to 15 motor crashes a day. I mean, it was just one right after the other, after the other, after the other. So, um, and I said on the phone call the other night that I testified in around 150 cases. And I think somebody pointed out, well, that's mighty low for 30 years. What you don't understand is those other cases, they pled guilty. The 150, around 150 was the one that were the ones who went to trial. So, most of my cases pled guilty over my career. So, I testified in probably in front of a jury. I don't know. I didn't keep up with it along my career each year. How many did I do? That, that's just a rough estimate. But I have testified, in front of juries. But I testified more in front of a judge than I did juries, because when you go to district court and you're found guilty, the defendant has to have the money to put it to superior court, and that's going to cost a whole lot more money. So most of those cases were before a judge. Now, in civil trial, it was the total opposite. I probably didn't testify no more than 10 civil trials because they hashed it out before it went to court. I even had cases in civil trials where I was on the way to the courthouse to testify, and I got a phone call, "Don't come, we've settled." with the insurance companies that, they wait to the very last hour to do that. So 99% of mine was in criminal court, and they were DWI. We are a state highway patrol. We don't investigate murders, robberies, none of that. We got what they call the State Bureau of Investigation. Now, those men and women do not play. They have charged one particular politician who had more power than anybody in this state, and he went to prison for 5 years. They've charged state troopers. They've charged sheriffs. They've charged you name it. They don't care who you are. They're going to do their investigation, and they're going to do it right. So the difference between here and Massachusetts is they have a state police where if you work the road as a trooper and you want to be a detective, you can go to that division. But with us, we are a highway patrol. Our job is dealing with motor vehicle crashes, speeding tickets, DWI. We guard the governor, lieutenant governor. We have a helicopter unit. We have a interstate drug team. We have a caisson unit that's very popular. They go to Georgia, Tennessee, other states to do police funerals. And we have a reconstruction team. And that's about it. We have a motorcycle unit also.
Makes sense that most people plea out. I mean, I know that when you say OUI, it brings up my bad memories for me, but probably one of the best days ever, actually, for me, which was getting arrested for OUI at age 19, because it did give me a wake up call. Like, it could have been so much worse. I like look back at the police officer that arrested me that night, and I'm thankful. I'm like, thank God he arrested me, because it who knows what would have happened to me, because I was headed at age 19 down a bad path, and that was me bottoming out. That was like the best scenario for me to bottom out. It's just a simple OUI. It sounds shitty, but it could have been so much worse. I know people have much worse stories with alcohol, but I imagine, like, for me, when that happened, I did the breathalyzer, you know what I mean? And I knew I was guilty. So it's like, how can we settle this as soon as possible with the least amount of harm to myself? And I mean, and that's what it was. And I settled very quickly. And I think that's what most people probably do in that situation, is they know that they're wrong, and they just want to, deal with it and move on with their lives. Is that generally what you see too on OUIs?
Well, generally speaking, but there's one real good attorney that I know, and he's actually my attorney. If something was to come up, he's been practicing law for 48 years. If he goes to try it, you did something wrong. You either put the date wrong on the affidavit, or he has a question with the stop. And believe it or not, he's the type of attorney who would come over to me and say, check your times, check your times. And sure enough, I'd get on the stand, and about halfway through, he would drop the hammer. And I realized I had written a time down. And believe it or not, writing a time down wrong will get one thrown out, under a particular judge or judges. So he was the type that would do it respectfully. A lot of good defense attorneys don't come out barking from the start. They try to be real nice to you. Then after about 4 or 5 questions, they drop the hammer and they're like, you got me. So I was always truthful. And I said, yes, sir, I made a mistake. And I wound up losing the case. Could I have somehow, went and tried to change it or whatever before I got on the stand? Yeah. But look, I made the mistake. I owned up to it. We moved on. Me and him would go eat lunch. Business is, he's got a client that's paid him $2,500 to represent him for DWI. He's going to do all he can to get that person out of it. And, the way most of us look at it is, we did our job that night or that morning. We got them off the road before they killed somebody. So all we can do is come to court, tell the truth, and let the judge or the jury decide whether they're guilty or not. And I always did that. And credibility goes a long ways, especially when you testify in court. once you lose credibility, word gets around real fast, and every single attorney is going to know it, and they're going to try every case that you take up there. And I'm not bragging, but I had a good reputation because I held nothing back. Everything I had, I turned over to the district attorney, and by law, they're required to turn it over to the defense. And in the meantime, if something was to come up, I'd take it to the DA, and they would give it over to the defense. I never hid anything. There was no reason to hide anything, because, in my opinion, based on my training experience, they were impaired. Now, when it gets to court, the judge may or may not find that person guilty. That's beyond my control. All I can do is put my left hand on the Bible, swear to God that I'm there to tell the truth, and let the chips fall where they fall. And I can proudly say that there are several attorneys I could go to right now, and I'm not looking to get into trouble, but if I needed them, they would actually represent me for free, believe it or not. So I'm proud to have left honorably, with a good reputation. I did work with, some other folks who didn't leave with a good reputation. And one thing in North Carolina, if you're caught lying on the stand and you really make the district attorney mad, he or she can do what he calls called a giglio. What that means is the district attorney has lost total confidence in your ability to testify in court. Where there's 100 counties in North Carolina. So when you sign up to be a trooper, they can transfer you from the beach to the mountains. But if that district attorney sends a giglio on you, you're not going to be able to testify in any court. So you're either going to resign or they're pretty much going to fire you. So I've always, tell the truth. Tell the truth. If you lose the case, you lose the case. Move on to the next one.
Absolutely. We have that in Massachusetts too. And it's funny how some of those lists that the DAs would keep were actually like secret, but now it's more public. We have this post commission too, because it came out that there were lists like that no one knew about. Some journalists found out. And now we have this post commission, which certifies police officers, and they have almost like trials against police officers if they do things that are incorrect or, lack credibility. It's so interesting you mentioned the credibility part, because I feel like a lot of this with Karen Reed now has gotten so much bigger than just John O'Keefe and Karen Reed. It's like all the other cases. There's another guy who killed his wife, and we all know we believe he killed her. It's pretty obvious he killed his wife. Brian Walsh is his name. And
Right.
because of what Michael Proctor and some of these other police officers have done, they're the same ones investigating this guy who killed his wife. It's all coming up, like every single case. So I feel like this DA's office and the Mass State Police and the Canton Police, to a lesser degree, they're all trying to protect their credibility and their reputation with Karen Reed, because all their other cases are getting either appealed or just challenged in court right now. Like, it's already happening. And we've seen that in the past in Massachusetts too, with drug testing, where we had this chemist that was fudging things, and all the cases got dismissed. And so there's been a lot of that where police officers lose their credibility and people get away with crimes because police officers weren't being honest. So I just hats off to you for bringing that up right from the beginning, and bringing it
Well,
up how important that was to you to keep your credibility and to be honest.
I'm gonna be honest with you. I had the best job in North Carolina. If I want to turn left out my driveway, I could turn left. If I want to turn right, I could turn right. I'm my own boss. We worked alone. And, when I came on, believe it or not, we had the old VHS tapes that we put in the trunk that taped everything. The cameras didn't have work, but technology has come so far the way it is now. Each stop is well, let me go back. I'll give you an example. So if I'm sitting in the median and you come by speeding and I stop you, I cut the blue lights on. It starts taping 2 minutes before I cut my blue lights on. So it's going to show me sitting in that median or doing whatever for 2 minutes. So I stop you. And we went from VHS tapes to CDs, and now they have it where you have to go to the district office and it's downloaded to a server and it's kept for 1 year. So if you wanted to manipulate that by any means, there is no way possible you could do it. Now, there is a function on there, for instance, DWI, that you can press the button and it's marked because the district attorney wants that stop to prosecute the case. So the supervisor, sergeant, or whoever can go in there and they can see where it's marked in red or whatever and put it on a thumb drive and take it to the district attorney. So we come a long way. Matter of fact, when I first came on, we didn't even have laptops. All the crash reports we did by hand, all the tickets we did by hand. And now everything's done on the computer. Your ticket is printed off on the computer. So as far as technology, law enforcement has come a long, long way from the first day I started.
Before we get into the John O'Keefe stuff and how you would handle that, I want to ask you, because there was a comment that just came in. It said this man has more integrity in his pinky fingernail than the whole of the Massachusetts State Police. That was from Connie B, who just made a comment. I'm just wondering, with you, in terms of what you did, and the Mass State Police being under such fire right now, like they're questioning about the Sallyport video and even like jury tampering. Have you ever seen anything like that in North Carolina? Like in terms of like that kind of allegation where the state police are, the center of allegations of jury tampering or
No.
doctoring videos?
No. And now, as far as the jury tampering, we have bailiffs work with the sheriff's department, and they are in the courtroom on every single case, no matter who it is. They're in there. I have seen where, say, somebody's in prison and they're filing some type of lawsuit. Maybe 2 or 3 correctional officers will come with them, but the bailiff from the sheriff's department is always in charge. I've never seen a state trooper ever in charge of a jury in my career, because that's the preview of the sheriff's department. As far as the video, there would be no way to, well, getting back to that, if we were going to store that vehicle, if we said it was a crash, being that it's a police officer, we would have took it to our garage, and we have a paint booth in there that's never used. So what I would have done is I would have had it towed there, and I would immediately taken pictures of that entire vehicle all around. I'd spent, I don't know, maybe an hour and a half, 2 hours just taking pictures. And the door would be locked, and there would be a note up there: do not enter, contact such and such. So before anybody went into that area, they would either have to contact me, and we would have a log outside of that area, which would include the date, the trooper or SBI's name, the time they entered, the time they left, the purpose of them being there, and what agency they work for. And the reason I would take pictures is because if anybody tried to manipulate any type of evidence, I've got the pictures immediately when it was pulled in there. And we can narrow it down to who signed in, who signed out. And the state would go, as far as even probably giving somebody a polygraph, to be honest with you. So nobody would have been allowed in that area unless me, the investigating officer, knew about it. Now, obviously, the reconstruction unit that works with us, they would call me and say, "Hey, man, we're going to go over there and, you know, we're going to get the black box. We're going to look at it, da, 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 da." They still have to sign in, the reason for being there, the time they got there, the time they left, and why they were there. But either I would go let them in or the person in charge of the garage would let them in. But it would definitely be inside of our garage and it would be locked up. And you have got to have a reason to go in there.
I definitely want to ask about Michael Proctor and the lack of pictures, but because you brought that up. But going back to the credibility issue, have you? Because obviously, I have a lot of guests on the show discussing this, and just myself and the trolls go crazy anytime somebody new is on the scene. Have you received any pushback from kind of the trolls or the social media folks on since your appearance here on the show?
No, 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 because I'm not really on social media that much. So I haven't received anything, and it's I'm not looking to cause any problems or issues for anybody. You know, I'm just like you. I've got an opinion. I have the right to my opinion, and I have a right to express my opinion. So, you can either agree with me or you can disagree with me. That's fine. But you know, I did it. I know how things are supposed to be done, and it's my opinion. It's not the Highway Patrol's opinion. It's my opinion on based on my training and experience in doing it for 30 years.
Excellent. And so Michael Proctor basically took no pictures when he towed this vehicle, what they're calling the murder weapon. I mean, what do you think about that? You said you would take hours of pictures. When would you
Well,
start taking pictures? Would you take pictures right as it was being towed, or you wait till it get back to the station? What
no,
do
no,
you
no,
think
no,
about Michael Proctor?
no. What I would have done in that situation is, first of all, you got to find the vehicle. You got to find it. So let's just say I agreed it was a crash and I was going to go tow it. Um, we would get our garage personnel who has a rollback to meet me over there. So I would take pictures at the residence before it was even put on the back of the rollback. I would have took them all the way around the vehicle, inside the vehicle, under the vehicle, on top of the vehicle. I mean, you're probably talking, I don't know, maybe 75 or 100 pictures. I would take them close up. I would take them back. I would look for any damage. So I would be able to testify in court. If I thought this was a crash, these pictures were taken before it was taken to be stored at our garage.
What do you
I
think
mean,
about
because
yeah? Well, what
yeah,
do you
I
think
mean,
that he didn't take those pictures? So, like, what does that say to you that a Mass State Police detective didn't take pictures like that?
well, I don't know. I mean, it does raise red flags. I mean, I don't know why you wouldn't take pictures. Um, I'll just say it raises flags for me because you've got a possible hit and run vehicle with a dead officer in the front lawn, and juries want to see pictures. So I don't see any reason why you wouldn't want to take pictures. So I'll let the audience guess on that one, but I would definitely 100% taking pictures.
Definitely. I take pictures of everything. Yeah, it's funny, if anyone ever like, had someone ding my door, pictures instantly. I felt the same way. It's like I must have taken like 25 pictures in like 2 minutes, you know what I mean? Of the same door, just over and over
Well,
again.
well, yeah, you got to understand too. That scene, that crash, if it was a crash, uh, you're gonna call in the reconstruction team. So the reconstruction team wants to see exactly how that vehicle looked uh, prior to being put on the rollback. So that would help them tremendously to see pictures before it was towed.
Definitely. And I know you wanted to kind of break down how you would have responded to this and it goes step by step. So where do you want to start from the moment that they find John's body on the front lawn?
Yeah,
And
well,
let's say that you were showing up there. How do you want to go
well,
about that?
well. Here is how it would happen. Here we have the SBI. Okay, the SBI, they investigate high-profile cases and non-profile cases. So, being that it was a local police department, the local police department would have called the State Bureau of Investigation in to investigate this because there would have been a conflict of interest, obviously. So, and I have worked with them on several cases. So they would they would have been called, and there would have been a lot of SBI officers there, probably a few deputy sheriffs, I would imagine, but mainly the SBI would take the lead of this investigation. So they would show up, and I believe there was maybe a few people outside where the body was. What they would have done immediately was they would have said, "Do you know who this person is? Do you know how old he is? Do you know what happened?" Uh, and obviously they would have said, "Yeah, he's a police officer." So they would have separated everybody outside, and within 5 minutes they would have been knocking on that door. I mean, you got a dead body in the front yard, you're going to knock on the front door. So they would have knocked on the front door, and here, with the SBI, these men and women are separated, throughout the state. So it may take one agent an hour to get there. It may take them 30 minutes. One may live 5 minutes away. So they would knock on the door and they would ask who owns the house, and then they would ask them, do they know anything about the body on the front lawn? Um, the next thing they would do is they would get everybody out of the house. And while they're doing that, you got an agent at the mattress office typing up a search warrant. And he or she is going to be on the way shortly. But you get them out of the house, you separate them, you put them all in separate cars. Now, I don't know if the SBI here has cameras in their cars, but they do have audio where they can tape it. For example, if you go back and look at that Alex Murdaugh case, every time he talked to the law enforcement, they had it on audio in their car or at the police station. So they would have separated everybody, and they would have had them fill out a statement. Now, it's voluntary. You don't have to fill it out. You don't even have to talk to the police. So they would have separated everybody. They would have gotten the search warrant, and they would have went from room to room to room to room to room to room, looking for, who knows, there could be somebody else in the house that's injured or whatever. I mean, you got a dead body in the front yard. So they would have searched the house completely. While they were searching the house, crime scene tape would have been put up all around that property. Probably that whole block would have been blocked off. Now, they would have searched the house, and then obviously they would have found some, or they wouldn't have found something. They would have had their mobile crime van on the way to the scene where they can gather evidence. They've got everything they need in there. They would section off an area where if the media shows up, they would be in that area, and there would be a command post. And they would tell the owners of the house, you may want to be gone for a few days because we're going to take control of this house, and we'll let you know when we're done. And they would also brought a long, long tent, maybe several tents, and they would have put it directly over the body where you can't see from the sides. I mean, they would have probably put up several tents. Now, in my experience, you cannot move the body until you talk to the medical examiner. So at this point in time, I would assume the SBI would tell them, listen, we don't know what happened. It's unknown. Once we try to figure out, we'll call you because you cannot move that body here in North Carolina until you talk to the medical examiner. So they'd have the tent up. They'd get some heaters, kerosene heaters, whatever you got to get, and they would melt that snow in a large part of that area around the body and even further beyond the body, looking for any type of evidence. And once the body is moved, they would continue to talk to everyone in the house and get their side of the story. They would seize all cell phones, and like I said, they would have a vehicle there to collect each and every cell phone, and they would put it in an evidence bag, and they would seal it up properly. They'd put the name, the date, where it was sealed from, the whole 9 yards, and all that would be stored in that van. So initially, all that snow would have been melted because you've got to look around for, evidence. That is the perfect time to look for it. And all that snow would have been gone completely, and they would have been there for days upon days, unless they went in the house, and obviously if they saw something suspicious, then they would continue questioning it.
I just want to jump in quick on the body, on moving the body. They did say John was still alive when they took him out by ambulance, but you bring up some good points because people in the chat are even saying they doubt that he was even alive at that point, even though they said he was, because they did remove the body. But like you bring up so many good points, like the crime scene tape. Would there have been an issue because it was snowing or a blizzard to lay out the crime scene tape? What do you think on that?
No, as I said the other night, I've worked several hurricanes where it's been 70, 75 miles an hour. You find a tree, you find a pole, and you tie it, and you tie it, and you tie it. And yes, it may bounce up and down side to side, but the crime scene's tape is going to stay up. If you have to put 3 or 4 crime scene tapes up, but yes, there would definitely be crime scene tape where nobody unauthorized, they would not be allowed on that property. 1,000%.
And the kerosene heaters, that's a great point because they basically said they had to come back later because there was too much snow. I mean, I imagine we probably get more snow in Massachusetts than North Carolina. If you have kerosene heaters like that for snow, I imagine our state police have to have them as well, right?
Well, I don't know that for a fact, but I mean, there's other type of heaters. If you look, I mean, there's some that you can plug in that blows a tremendous amount of heat straight down. I mean, you can keep moving that around. Trust me, they would have all the equipment. This wouldn't be their first rodeo in snow. They would have the proper equipment, and they would definitely melt all that snow because you've got to see what's near the body, and to try to figure out what happened. I mean, this is a Boston police officer in a front yard. You're not going to leave that scene. Nobody's going to leave that scene. They're going to be there until they're complete. And they pretty much know if somebody did this that was in the house or may have left or whatever. They're going to do a complete investigation.
Absolutely. It's so many weird things about this. They use solo cups and stop and shop bags to collect evidence. Have you ever seen that where they're using solo cups?
No, no. Matter of fact, in my car, I always had evidence bags and um, evidence tape. I carry that with me all the time because you never know when you go out to store evidence. And as far as us storing evidence, the way we do it is we put it in we put it in an evidence bag. We seal it up, put our initials and the date, and we take it to the office. Then it goes in temporary storage. There's a lock on it. The only person that has access to it is a supervisor, and there's a form we fill out. And you have to put down where you got it from, the date, the time. You have to put what type of evidence it is. It takes probably 45 minutes to an hour just to fill that form out. It goes in the evidence locker. You send an email to the supervisor. Hey, there's a blood kit in the temporary storage. He'll come in the next day or whatever, and he's got a log, and he logs it in, the date, the time, what it is, and it's very important to keep the evidence log.
Definitely. And there was a state police, what they call a CERT team that came in, but they were delayed. They were held up to go see the crime scene. It seems like to me they were held up until Trooper Michael Proctor had access to Karen's car until they towed the car. Have you ever seen anything like that where the state you call it the SBI? What is SBI? Is it the State Bureau of Investigation? I'm assuming is that what the
Yeah,
SBI is?
yeah, State Bureau of Investigation.
So in North Carolina, you have the SBI come out versus where we have the state police come out. Would the SBI ever be held up for hours, like to go to a scene for any reason, especially for a police officer?
No, once somebody called 911 and the local police said we want the SBI there, they're not leaving. Nobody's leaving. They're going to be there the entire time. Nobody's leaving. I can promise you that, because if you leave, somebody could come and do this or somebody could come and do that. But no, I have never seen it. Once they get on the scene, they're there and they ain't leaving.
Not leaving. Yeah. Yeah, it's crazy because I mean, we had a police. It's funny too because the Canton Police Department, the town police, they said they recused themselves from the investigation because there was conflict of interest. The homeowner, his brother worked for the Canton Police Department. The homeowner's brother was a Canton Select Board member. The person across the street was the assistant police chief. Um, with this conflict of interest thing, then all of a sudden the police chief is driving by a day later and finds evidence and collects it. And the state police, when they go to tow Karen Reed's car in a different town, they let her leave the scene. They let her drive back to her parents' house. She gets, back to her parents' house. They show up to tow the car, the state police. And, basically the whole thing is like, they don't do what they're supposed to do. It's like, have you ever seen anything like that? Because now they're towing the car back. The Canton Police Department have recused themselves. State police go to the town of Dighton, which is several towns away from Canton, and they tow the car back to the Canton Police Department, who have already recused themselves. Now the supposed murder weapon is being held at the Canton Police Department, who have recused themselves from the investigation. Have you ever seen anything like that? Does that make any sense to you? Do you see the SBI bring it to a town police department that has recused themselves from the investigation?
Never, because that's the point of them recusing themselves. I mean, I couldn't imagine a police department recuse themselves and you're going to take the vehicle to that department. I mean, I have never seen that. I mean, I'm sure that the state police up there have a place where they could have towed it to and had it secured. I mean, that's a no-brainer. I mean, I'm surprised somebody didn't speak up and say, "What the hell are you thinking, dude? You're towing it back to the local police department who is supposed to have nothing to do with this. Go over there, get the damn car and tow it to their barracks or wherever they can store it. No, I've never seen that.
Crazy. A couple questions came in. Here's one from AKA the Cat Lady. She's a regular viewer, supporter. She's on Twitter X. She says, how does he feel about the Mass State Police being assigned as a special unit to a single DA's office as the DA's detective unit? We have Mass State Police, basically detectives, embedded in the district attorney's offices, and it seems like they report more to the district attorney than they do the actual Mass State Police. What do you think about that? Does that make sense? Do you see anything like that in North Carolina?
No, the district attorneys have their own investigators. They, depending on how big the county is, they may have 2 or 3 investigators. The State Highway Patrol has never worked for the district attorney. I have never seen that. No.
The SBI doesn't either. The SBI doesn't work.
No. I mean, the district attorney is a totally different entity. I mean, you know, I have never seen the SBI or obviously us work at a district attorney's office. And furthermore, I wouldn't even want to work there because they make a whole lot less money than we do. So, no, I have never seen state police or SBI go work with the DA's office ever.
We have a new Massachusetts State Police colonel who came in from New Jersey. I know that he knows that the Mass State Police are under a cloud of suspicion, both for the Sandra Birchmore case, but as well as the John O'Keefe case and some other things that have happened over the year, like what we call Troopergate, where there was payroll fraud and the feds charged a bunch of Massachusetts State Police officers. There's been a lot of scandals here. What kind of reforms do you think he should be looking at? Like, how should he reform this organization? Like, and what should like us as citizens be asking for?
Oh, it all goes back to training. You have to treat everybody the same, no matter your political affiliation, no matter how rich you are, how poor you are. It all goes back to training. And they need, in my opinion, the first thing they need to do is go back and look at training, because obviously in this case, they should have knocked on the door and obviously went inside. You know, it would be good to find out how many cases before this did they have the same exact thing that they actually did knock on the door, and they didn't in this case. So I would say training, hold people accountable. When you make a mistake, you may get 10 days off without pay, or you may get demoted, or you may get transferred, depending on the severity. And that would signal something throughout the entire state. Hey, you need to do it by the book, or you're subject to being transferred, fired, or under investigation. So I think training plays a big part in trying to change the culture and the atmosphere of law enforcement. I remember when I first,
Go ahead.
when I first came on, I looked at my first sergeant, and we have serve and sense pins, and he came on in 1979, and I'll never forget. There was 8 out of, well, let me say this: when I applied, people would give their right arm to be a state trooper. 2,000 people applied. They took 76 in the academy. It's 28 weeks. We had 45 to graduate. People were quitting left and right. It's a paramilitary patrol school. And it was 28 weeks. And all the way through probably 27 weeks, it was just pure hell on earth. They did everything they could to try to get you to quit. And obviously, I said I wasn't going to quit. So now the way law enforcement is, they'll be lucky to get 100 applications a year. I got off track. What was the question you asked? I apologize.
Well, no, it's good because you were talking about training, and I want to get back to the training issue because we've had some issues with training here too because we have this MPTC, right, which is the Massachusetts Police Training Commission, I believe it is, and they have a scandal where there was a ton of test fraud and training fraud and police officers that weren't actually certified that said they were, and there's no oversight. It's with the state. How do you do proper training when it seems like the cops are finding ways not to do the training? They get extra pay for it, but they actually don't do it half the time. And there's a lot of fraud and there's no oversight of it. We had this whistleblower who used to be a Massachusetts state police officer come on the show. He was hired by one of the towns to look into some things. He came back with this huge audit that basically showed that, the training fraud of their local police officers, and it was covered up. And he basically says this guy isn't a real police officer. He's done fraud on the training. He's not certified in my eyes, but nothing gets done. The state basically covers it up. So how do we fix the training issue that is clearly there for town and state police?
Well, if somebody said, they went in training and didn't, I mean, you can track that because every class I go to, you have to sign in. When you go to firearms, you have to qualify with your pistol. They write your name down, the date, and all that. So they're really strict here about training, and there's a paper trail, and there are classes that you're required to take online every year, and you have to pass those classes. We go through, we have a driving track we have to go through once every couple of years, and we have DWI detection every 2 years, and you have to sign in, and you actually assign to that training. So every trooper in the state goes through from the colonel all the way down, goes through all of this training. And to give you the best answer I can is, there's a paper trail where it shows whether you were in that class at that particular day, at that particular time. And, most of the instructors know who the troopers are. And if there was ever any question that somebody signed somebody else's name, chances are they are going to get called.
I guess the question here is how do you root out the fraud, because the commission that is like state, it's the state that's been doing fraud on the training, which is they're allowing it. They're approving it. They're not doing any oversight. It's a really weird situation in Massachusetts. We're supposed to be so progressive and smart where all the colleges are and the biotech, but we let our government basically do whatever they want. It seems like it's just really a disturbing situation.
Well, in that case, I would think maybe the federal government would step in, because the federal government gives us a lot of money. And if people are not completing that training, they could easily cut off that money. If they found out, and they'd have the federal investigators in coming down and looking at the training center, looking here, looking there. So honestly, I would think probably the federal government would get involved, because a lot of these classes are mandated by training and standards. And I can say here, our training and standards are they're very strict. I'll give you an example. Let's talk about training. We have to go to radar training every 3 years. We're about the only state that has to go to radar training, and it's actually about every 2.5 years. We don't ever have any speeding trials, because we go every 2.5 years, and the test is very hard to pass. You have to clock so many cars, and you have to check off on the radar, this and that. And the training we have is very, 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 very tough. And if training and standards here in North Carolina was to find out that, you had an instructor did this or did that, I can tell you now, they would look into it. Now, if there's a corruption at training and standards, like I said, we get federal money, and if they found out, I'm sure they would come in and they would do their own investigation.
I think that's what probably the only way we have any reform here is from the feds, like they did with Troopergate earlier, where they found out that police weren't. Basically, it was like the feds were writing grants for like OUI, 4 hours of OUI duty, where cops would go out from like 10 to 2 a.m. to do some extra hours to pull people over for OUI, and they weren't doing it. And the feds came, it was payroll fraud. And the feds
Yeah,
came in
well,
and they threw a
yeah,
bunch
well,
of people in jail.
well, we had that too. We had one particular guy graduated from patrol school who was supposed to be working, and he was actually sitting at home, and they called him at home, and he lost his job, obviously. So we do have special projects, DWI projects, and they expect you to go out and arrest impaired drivers. You're getting paid time and a half. Seatbelt SOP, they expect you to write seatbelt tickets, and that is money set aside by the state on those. We have a motor carrier division that does nothing but commercial motor vehicles. So they expect you to inspect certain amount of commercial motor vehicles each year. And if you don't reach that goal, they're going to start cutting monies, because the federal government pays for, it's called mix sap and size and weight. They actually pay for those vehicles and equipment and all that good stuff. And if they realize that you aren't doing what you're supposed to do, they can very easily cut off that money. And they have been known to do it.
Absolutely. Why wouldn't you? I mean, if they're not doing what they're supposed to do, it's like being a parent. If you're paying for your kid to, get extra tutoring and he's not doing it, you're not going to continue to pay for the tutoring, right? I mean, either that or you're going to have a talk with the kid and say, "Hey, I'm wasting my money. You better take advantage of this, or I'm going to cut it off," right? I mean, it just
Well,
yeah. Go ahead. Sorry.
well, when we do SOP and it's on our days off and we're getting paid time and a half, they expect you to go out and work. And if you don't go out and work and you don't arrest impaired drivers or whatever, more than likely you're not going to get that assignment again. So there is accountability held on that end, and that's through the state. That's through the state. But with the commercial motor vehicle, that's a whole different budget where, like I said, you're you're required to do so many inspections per year, and if the state falls short of that, they very well could cut the money, and they actually have in the past.
We also had a CDL scandal where the Massachusetts State Police would be giving, potential truck drivers, CDL tests to get them special licenses, and where certain state police officers were getting paid to what they were giving people what they called golden handshakes. So they were taking bribes to basically pass people on CDL tests. Again, Mass State Police. It's like over and over again, so much corruption with our state police with no oversight from the government. What do you think could be done to kind of change the culture at the Mass State Police specifically, who seem to have one scandal after another, but nothing ever changes? Maybe a
But
couple people get arrested by the feds, but nothing changes. Like, how do we root out that corruption and make real change with this state police?
well, the answer to your question on that CDL, we don't give out CDLs. They have to go to the driver's, where you get your driver's license at. They have to go there, and they have to take a written test, and they have to they have to have a doctor sign off on it, and there's a whole lot more to it. Um, Now, if you're talking about pretty much the entire state or whatever, is full of corruption, the only way I could answer that is somebody above the state would have to come in, and it would have to be the federal government to investigate the corruption. Um, if it was our state, for example, if there was a bunch of officers, well, first of all, like I said, we don't give out CDL license as state troopers. If they found out, which I mean, there's no way I could do it. There's no way I could even do it. But if there was some way that I could do it and I did it, I would be fired, and I would be fired immediately. Well, after an investigation, I'd be fired. So I don't know how a state trooper can give out a CDL license without going to DMV, because DMV is the one that gives you your driver's license. So that just blows my mind that that would even happen, because, you know, to get a CDL, to get
Yeah,
a CD, to get a
I was
CDL,
just
you got to have a DT physical. You know, you got to take a test, and you got to actually bring a commercial motor vehicle, and they're out there watching you back up and all this and that. And, you know, it's a lot different than getting a Class C license like I have, like most people have, just drive a car. So I didn't even know, you know, those troopers were doing that. I mean, that just really blows my mind.
my dad was signed at the RMV, so our register whatever that is, Registry of Motor Vehicles. So they would have this test facility, the RMV, but they would have the state police
Right.
oversee the thing, and it's just another. It was like a lot of cops too giving each other favors, like, oh, this is my landscaper, make sure he passes. Here's like $50, or you remember that favor I did for you? Can you help this guy out? He's my uncle. He's my brother. He's my, you know what I mean? It's like a lot of that stuff going on where crazy. So
Well,
much. Yeah.
I've never honestly heard of that. I mean, all my years, I'm, you know, when I go get my license renewed, I'm just like anybody else. I have to take an eye test and, you know, all that. I mean, you know, this is the first time hearing of that. And, you know, if you do things bad long enough, you're going to get caught. You're going to get
That,
caught one way or the other. And that's the way, you know, I look at it. People love to talk, and you make somebody mad or whatever, you give their sister or brother or father a ticket, and hey, you remember when I helped you out? Well, I'm not going to help you out with a ticket, and somebody winds up spilling the beans on you. I mean, that's just unbelievable. I have never heard of that, to be honest with you.
that's crazy. It's like we learn new things all the time. That was another scandal that came down this year. Not in 2025, but just 2024. That happened. Like, this is actually people are police officers, state police are being federally charged. They've gone to federal court. So it's like an ongoing scandal, but nothing like the state police like have no there's no like investigation like publicly that we it's like, what are they doing? They just don't do anything. It's like, oh, a couple guys got arrested, we'll put out a press release about how disappointed we are, and then they move on. Nothing changes. It's just
Well. Listen, the buck stops with somewhere. The buck stops with the colonel. If the colonel can't rule out corruption, he needs to pack his trash and go home. We have a colonel, we have a secretary above the colonel, and you know, the buck stops with somebody. If he can't hold people accountable and do proper investigations, you know, he needs to retire. Get somebody in there that can, you know, do the job.
absolutely, absolutely. And I think consider some of these changes, like maybe not have the state police be embedded at the DA's office, maybe not have the state police part of the RMV for the CDL licenses. Like look at what other states are doing, like North Carolina. It seems like you guys have your systems much more in order. So I think Massachusetts should be looking at what you're doing down there.
Well, I don't know why the state police would be in the DA's office. I mean, you know, like I said before, every single district attorney here may have one, two, or three uh, investigators. Depending on the size of the county. I mean, you just telling me that is just unbelievable because you know they're not going to take a state trooper off the road as short as we are now and put them up at the district attorney's office. I mean, that makes no sense.
That doesn't at all. And it seems like there's a real lack of accountability because who's their boss? Is the colonel the boss or is it the DA the boss? It's
Well,
I think they
I don't think the colonel or the legislature would allow that to happen here. You know, and the secretary over public safety. I mean, they unless the legislature passed it into law, and I don't think they would ever even do that. But there's no way they're going to take four state troopers and put them in a district attorney's office, especially now with the climate of law enforcement, where, like I said, you can barely get 100 people to apply to be a state trooper this day and time, and they're not going to take them off the road to put them at the DA's office. Be honest with you, when you brought it up, that's the first time I've ever even heard of, state police working for a DA. But every state is different, so I guess that's what y'all do up there. I don't know.
yeah. Got a question that came in. They said, what does he think about Rafferty escorting to court? The Canton police chief, who is like it's kind of very controversial right now. She got like a 1-year contract extension. There's a select board campaign happening right now. The challenger to the incumbent just announced. I just saw the video like 10 minutes before we went live here. She's actually saying she's not going to, she's running basically on not approving the Canton police chief for a contract renewal. Chief Rafferty, the Canton Police Department, showed up at the court the other day for Karen Reed in full uniform, in Dedham, in a different town, and she was escorting the brother of John O'Keefe. It seemed like into court. Does that kind of seem weird to you? That was the question from a viewer. Do you think that's strange?
Well, I think the state police would, what are you doing there? Y'all are recused from this case. What are you doing going to court? I mean, if that happened here, I can assure you the SBI would look into it and say, look, you don't need to be going to court. You need to recuse yourself. Let us handle it. We are the lead investigators. Can they stop her from going to court? I don't know. But one would think that if a local department is recused from a case, if I was the chief or whatever, I'd stay far away from that courthouse if it was me.
Great point. Her department's recused, so what is she doing there? That's such a great point.
Correct.
Yeah, there's so many head scratchers here. I want to ask you about Michael Proctor. He's one of the Massachusetts state police officers that is embedded with the DA's office. He's under a cloud of suspicion. He's like suspended. He's, before the whatever they're calling the state police board. He's basically like on trial for his job right now. He sent these texts out about Karen Reed that were truly disgusting and dehumanizing. And he sent them to the other Mass State Police that were, like I said, embedded with the district attorney's office. Most of them have been cleared. What do you think about that? Do you think that they should all have been fired for even reading those and not reporting it to their superiors, not doing anything about it?
Well, yes, they should have told their supervisors because it's the middle of an investigation. A lot of times when a trooper goes to, and I've seen this many times, say somebody calls in a complaint about one thing, and you go to internal affairs and they find something else, or they've discovered this or that, or discovered that. Trust me, those three, I believe it's two lieutenants and a captain, they already know the answers to the questions they're going to ask. So the reason it may, I think he has his third hearing coming up. they may have uncovered uh, new new accusations, or they may have talked to somebody that they didn't talk to the first one or two times that they want to ask them about. I've seen troopers go 4 or 5 times to internal affairs, and I've actually seen troopers get fired for going for one thing and they find something else as far as the complaint. So the best thing to do in an investigation, like for us, a few years ago, we had to sign a form that if we're on an investigation, we're required to turn our cell phone bill in. And the ACLU come out and said they actually fought it. And on my days off, just say I was under investigation and they want to copy my cell phone bill. What I could do is on my days off, which is none of their business who I talk to on my days off, I could take a black magic marker and mark through everything. But while I'm on duty, they have access to everything. So if I work 10 hours and I'm on the phone for 4 hours, what did you do all day? Or, this or that, this or that. So during the investigation, you definitely want to keep everything professional. You don't want to rush to judgment. And honestly, the best thing to do is to keep your mouth shut and do your job.
Absolutely. Especially during an investigation of a death of a police officer.
That's correct.
You'd think you wouldn't want to jeopardize that at all. You'd want to play it straight by the book.
Right, because, for instance, if I had went and took pictures of Miss Reed's SUV on my personal cell phone, the defense attorney could subpoena my cell phone and got everything they wanted off of my cell phone. Text messages, phone calls, pictures, everything they want. That's why they gave me a $300 or $400 nice digital camera where I could take all those pictures. I mean, you never take pictures on your personal cell phone. Now, a lot, mostly all these supervisors have state-owned phones. So, yes, you can use them on your state-owned phones. We had a scandal a few years ago. Well, it's been probably 15 years ago, where a major was inappropriately texting another employee and on a state cell phone, and they got hold of all those text messages and he wound up getting fired. So you got to be all business. You got to be all serious. And the taxpayers expect you to do a job. You're hired to do a job. You're hired to be impartial, no matter who's involved. And, I think one of the text messages were, we need to get answers as soon as possible, blah, 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 blah. Well, my response to that would have been to upper management, look, if you want me to speed this up and find out what happened, why don't you get out behind your desk and come out here and hold my hand and help me investigate this crash? Because I'm not going to speed it up at all. I'm going to do a proper investigation from the minute I get there until we decide if and when we may or may not charge somebody. I'm not going to speed it up just because somebody up top wants me to speed up the investigation. Because you start speeding it up, you're going to miss a lot of things. You got to take your time, and you got to make sure everything is documented. All pictures are taken, interview witnesses, and that takes a lot of time. And you ain't going to have it done in 16 hours or 2 or 3 days. It's going to take some time by the time you interview everybody involved in the entire case. So, my advice is be careful what you text. I mean, if a supervisor was to send me a message, hey, how's the investigation going? I will respond back, it's going good. I've got people I need to interview. It would be on a strictly professional basis. I wouldn't be criticizing, obviously the defendant or anybody else involved in the case, because you know, it, it's going to come out.
No editorializing. Just buy the book. This is what's going on. That's it.
That's right.
Funny because I've been in office work, and I was a financial advisor at one point. And even there, because the feds, especially as a financial advisor, because we were regulated, highly regulated, actually, by the feds in the state. So it's like same thing. We're like I would never put any emails out or anything on a work that was like, or look at any websites or anything on like a work computer, because I know there's some oversight, and I can't imagine it's like that stuff for a financial advisor never comes up unless you do something wrong. You know what I mean? Like, but being a state police officer, or a state highway patrol, like you were, I just feel like the oversight, like I got to think you got to be by the book all the time.
Well, they told us many times, they drilled it in our heads, before you hit that send button on an email, you better think about it. You better think about it twice, because every email I sent on that patrol computer, on my MDT, anybody can forward it. Anybody in the public can forward it, and they can get just about any email I've sent. So, you know, if I got an email from a supervisor, if I had this to do or that to do, I'd type back, okay, I'll be there or whatever. I never used my my highway patrol email address nefariously. It was all business. I mean, because there was no need to. I had nothing to hide, or I never had any secret conversations with anyone. And like I said, anybody can forward you my emails. So that was never a question, I had to deal with.
Glad you brought up that, like in terms of the FOIA and the secret, because something happened with this DA that is so bizarro. He has his work email, like you said, that can be FOIA'd. But what some of the defense teams, I think it was I'm not sure if it was Karen Reed or Turtle Boy who found out first, but basically they found out that this DA has been using burner email, his personal email. And they had a bunch of different email addresses. Now they're asking for, all his communications on those emails, because he was sending emails directly to court personnel on his non-official email. And one of the emails was cheesy banana. That he was using a cheesy banana email address. I mean, why do you think he's doing that? Like, I'm sure you have some suspicions why. Have you ever heard anything like that? That a DA is contacting possibly even judges, court personnel, through a personal email instead of his official email, and the email address is cheesy banana.
Once again, I have never heard of that. But if he used a state computer or even a state phone, it can be for you. And I'd go as far as saying, I don't know the law up there, but you can, if it applies to this case, you very well could subpoena his personal cell phone. But no, if you have nothing to hide, you use your official government email address. I mean, why would you not use it? I mean, that's what it's there for.
I go back to being a financial advisor too, because we had rules like that. You would never contact a customer on a non-official email. Like if you're sending an email out, you would do it from your official email because it'd be a record of it. It just blows my mind that we have DAs that can't even, have the professionalism of someone who had a simple Series 7 broker's license. It just, to me, it's just so crazy that this is the type of games that the DA was doing in the state of Massachusetts here. And there's no repercussions. Like nothing has happened to him. He's still, holding his job. Everything's going on well for him.
Well, I would definitely try to have a hearing before the judge, and I would inquire on that. and you'd have to have some type of proof he was doing it, and I would just FOIA it. I mean, or possibly get a court order to turn over all emails, official and non-official.
Yeah, that's definitely in the work, and that's why we know about the cheesy banana because it's like in the court filings.
Right.
Yeah, let's go on to this other because you mentioned training that you have like an academy or something like that that you went through where a lot of recruits would drop out and they had a wide pool of candidates and they would only pick the best. We had a death here recently at a Mass State Police training academy of a young man named Enrique Delgado Garcia, and we don't know how he died. We still don't know. There's been a lot of crazy reports about it. His family is asking for answers, and there's been like an independent investigation set up through the attorney general. I have a state senator coming on Monday night to talk about this because he sent a letter to the AG about this because the family's not getting any information. They want to know why their son died at this police training, center. Um, what do you think about something like that? Like, should that? This has been months and months and months. Family still doesn't know. How much should the family know at this point, do you think? And have you ever seen anything like that in your experience, like recruits dying during training, and how do they handle that?
Yes, I saw it one time. It was let's see, probably the early '90s. We had the box, or used to. We had the box 2 3-minute rounds, and if you stopped punching, the clock stopped. And this was probably 4 weeks before patrol school ended because they didn't want everybody with black eyes having to take a picture. We had a recruit who was boxing, and he was killed during the boxing exercise. I'm thinking that the attorney general's office got involved. They did a full and complete investigation, and within a matter of a week, maybe a week or two, they came out with the findings. They did an autopsy, and it was medical related with him. So, in the particular case you're describing, I would think the attorney general would have enough investigators to look into it. And if it's been 5 months, to me, that's just unbelievable. I mean, they should have done a complete investigation the minute they found out about it. And it's hard to believe it's 5 months and the family don't have any answers. I mean, you would think within a month and a half, they would at least could tell the family what happened. I mean, that's once again, that's something I heard also, and it's unbelievable. I've never heard anything like this.
It's funny you mentioned boxing because that's what apparently that's all we know, that it was a boxing incident. We don't know anything else. There's been a lot of stories about broken teeth and broken this and broken, but yeah, we don't have anything officially happen this summer. And it's like I said, it's just one scandal. It's hard to keep up with all the scandals of the Massachusetts State Police and how our governor and our attorney general don't do anything about it. They just pass the buck, and the family is still sitting here since last summer. They don't know how their son died.
That really disturbs me because that could have been me in patrol school, boxing and died. I can promise you this: if that happened in North Carolina, within 2 to 3 weeks, my family would have known how I died. Because I'll tell you this, the media would have been all over it, and they wouldn't have stopped until they got the answers. That's just if that happened last summer, and now it's going on March. Once again, that's hard to believe why they don't have any answers. I mean, I assume that they've hired an attorney, and I assume the attorney has subpoenaed this and subpoenaed that, and done this or done that. But you know, they should have answers by now. They should have answers by now. I can tell you that they should have a complete report done as to what happened, how the person died. But it's been going on this long. It's once again, it's one of those things in this case I've never heard of. It's unusual.
It is. I'm glad you brought that up earlier, and you bring such good knowledge here because this family's been waiting. We also have a friend of the show who, again, another former Mass State Police, Todd McGee. He's going to be on the show Monday night with the state senator, and he was like, one of the people that like worked on that boxing program, and I know that he wants answers. It's frustrating when you're one of the good law enforcement or even retired law enforcement like Todd, and there's nothing that you can do for this family, and it's been since this summer. It's
Well, basically, the only thing the family can do is get an attorney, have that attorney, keep pushing for transparency in this case, and try to find out what happened. But once again, if it happened last summer, they don't have answers now. Something is not right with that. I mean, you don't have to have a PhD to figure that out. Something is not right with it.
absolutely been a great show so far. I love our comments from the chat that's watching, and all your knowledge that you're bringing. I'm calling you Carolina, NC State. Carolina, is anything else that we kind of didn't touch on tonight about the investigation or any other related to John O'Keefe or Karen Reed that you wanted to touch on
Well,
tonight?
yeah, there's a couple of just concerns I have with the crash investigation. I went back and looked at the reconstructionist testimony, and I have ran it through my mind a million times how this could be a crash. First of all, you have a responding trooper there, and let's just say, for the sake of it, it was a crash. Okay, let's just say it was a crash. The first question I have is, where's the crash report? By law, if there's a fatality, if there's damage above $1,000, or if there's an injury, or if somebody wants a report done, by law, you're required to do a report. And I went and I watched the state's Trooper Paul's testimony, and I'm just trying to figure out how he come to the conclusion he did. In every crash, you have a sequence of events. And I'll give you an example. You have a car going down the road, 2-lane road, crosses center line, hit a ditch, and overturns. So the sequence of events for that would be going straight ahead, cross the center line, hit a ditch, and overturn. Now, that's helpful information, not only in criminal, but civil. And on the back of that report, you have to draw out the motor vehicle crash. And you have to write a narrative, what happened before, what happened during, and what happened after the crash. And every single fatality I had, that's the first thing the reconstruction team wanted to see, the crash report. When I went to court, that's the first thing they wanted to see, the crash report, or, during discovery. You always turn it in. So here's something that hasn't been brought out anywhere that would be interesting to know. What I would have done is, Mr. O'Keefe, God rest his soul, he was 6'2". So what I would have done is I would have took a tape measure and I would have measured from the roadway up to the top of the top tail light. Then I'd measure to the top of the vehicle. So let's go with what Trooper Paul said that happened. He said the vehicle pulled up and it did a 3-point turn or a U-turn and then backed up and struck Mr. O'Keefe. Well, he held his arm out to the right, that Mr. O'Keefe held his arm out to the right, and he struck the tail light. Well, holding your arm out to the right is not going to bust a tail light in 45 or 50 pieces. It's probably not going to even crack it, to be honest with you. So I sat back and thinking, how would I justify doing a crash report on this? And let's just say she pulled up to the front of the house to let him out. She pulled forward, and he's saying she backed up. He had his arm out, and he was sideswiped, and he was thrown 30 feet from the point of impact. Well, if his arm is out to the right and it struck the tail light, the scratches are parallel going up and down. So if his arm was out to the right, the scratches would be going it would be going up it would be going up and down, not all the way up to the right, number one. And number two, if he's standing behind that vehicle and he has his arm out and he struck, with the amount of force and inertia, it's going to knock him backwards. And he's going to hit the ground, probably suffer a concussion. So as far as him being thrown 30 feet from the point of impact, and like I said, I have ran this through my mind a million times, and I can't even figure out how you can come up with that. So you measure from the ground up to the top of the tail light to the top of the SUV, and he was 6'2". So the tail light, is down a little bit. So he would have to be sort of squatted down, not all the way down, but squatted down to have his arm directly across from that tail light to be hit. He has no injuries. No bruises from the neck down. So every back-in crash I've had with pedestrians, they have had bruises. You're going to have bruises. And there was no bruises in this case. So I don't see how his arm was out to the right. He was struck and he was knocked 30 feet to the right after impact. In my opinion, he would have been knocked backwards, not off to the right in the front yard. And he probably would have suffered a concussion and not got up from it. And I also saw where he had a wine glass or whatever, and they drove the vehicle, what was it, 60 miles, and they found glass on the back bumper. There's no way.
Yeah.
Do what?
I'm not sure exactly how many miles. I think it was probably more like 25, 30, but it was a number of miles. Yes.
Well, to 25, 30 miles. And they also said the wind was blowing, 37 miles an hour. That wine glass or whatever is not going to stay on that bumper. And, another problem I have is he may or may not have his cell phone in his hand. So let's just say he had his cell phone in his hand and his arm was out to the right, that cell phone is going to go out of his hand and it's going to land on the roadway or the sidewalk. That cell phone is not going to land under his body. There is no way possible that you're going to find that cell phone under his body.
Such a great point about the cell phone.
But
weird.
Yeah, that tail light is polycarbon. You go out and you take your fist and you hit it, and you're going to break your fist. It's going to be hard to even crack that tail light with your fist. And on the inside of your arm, is not as hard as, the other side of your arm. So He's trying to say that she pulled up, she backed up, he did a 3-point turn or a U-turn. So I would want to know, when she backed up and did that 3-point U-turn and hit him, if his arm is out to the right, he's going to be back. He said side swipe. He's going to be knocked towards the road, not the grass, number one. And number two, his neck, from his neck all the way down, I promise you. And if you look at the literature, even at very low speeds, you are going to have bruises on your body. And the lack of bruises and all this stuff don't make any sense. So if I'd been called here to that scene and I had all this information, I would have not done a crash report. And something else they didn't do. Well, let me go back. If we would have thought it was a crash, if we would have thought it was a result of a motor vehicle crash, we would have had the reconstruction scene out there, and they would have been doing their thing, and I would have been doing my thing. But from what I've listened to and from what I've seen, I want to see where the crash report was done by the responding trooper to the scene. Because by law, when there's a fatality, you're required to do a crash report. You shall do it. I mean, there is no ifs, ands, buts about it.
Crazy. What do you think about? I'm guessing you've seen the Archer expert testimony at
Yes.
court. What do you think about their testimony in that? In general?
I think they done an excellent job. Another question I have is, and you may know the answer to this, I don't know. Were they allowed to go to the Sally Port and inspect the vehicle?
No.
See, I have a problem with that. If a defense attorney called me up and say, or anybody, the federal government or anybody in case, look, we got a reconstructionist that wants to come look at the vehicle. Yes, sir. When do you want to come? I'll meet you over there. I'll stay the entire time. I wouldn't have no problem whatsoever. They can stay there for 2 hours or 8 hours, do whatever you got to do. And another problem I have is we would have released that vehicle once the defense, if she got a defense attorney, and once they came and examined it and inspected it, once we were all complete done with it, I would have called the defendant up and said, ma'am, your vehicle is ready to go. We've completed the entire investigation, and I would have released the vehicle. I mean, there is legally no reason to hold that vehicle there. And I don't understand why it's being held.
I will say one thing on the ARCA. I don't think that they even made the request. I don't think the feds asked them to do that. That's actually one of the anti-Karen Reed kind of pushback on the ARCA guys. They say that they should have done more to actually investigate it physically. But I'm not sure all the specifics on why that didn't happen. But I think they were just asked, based on what we have here. What do you guys think?
Well, if I was on trial and I hired an attorney, I would definitely hire a reconstruction unit to go look at my vehicle and have them look it over like a fine-tooth comb and have them do what they had to do. Definitely, you want a reconstructionist to go look at it, because there could be some exculpatory evidence there that could very well clear you, because you got to understand, we got it on a lock and key. If anybody goes in there and tries to manipulate anything on there, we're going to know who did it, because I'm going to have a key to that to where it's stored. So I would definitely want a reconstructionist to go look at it on my behalf to prove that I didn't do it.
Absolutely.
Now,
Like,
also, I want to bring up real fast. She was charged with second-degree murder while being under the influence. So that's a two-pronged charge: second-degree murder and being under the influence. Being that it was a hit and run, you got to prove that that person was driving that vehicle. Number one, you got to prove they were driving that vehicle. You got to prove that they were impaired. And I think I read where at 9 o'clock they drew blood and she was, I think, at like a 0.09. Well, there's a two-pronged system to a DWI. Just because it's a 0.09, a lot of people don't realize, they think, well, you're automatically guilty. No, that's not the case. You have to perform, try to perform sobriety tests. They can refuse them or whatever, but you have to prove that they were impaired, not just because of that 0.09. You got to have more evidence to prove that that person was impaired at the time of the crash. And a 0.09 is not going to do it. You got to have other evidence. Red glassy eyes, her speech was slurred. She was unsteady on her feet. I told her to go B through D on her ABCs, and she either did them right or she did them wrong. I mean, there was a lot of cases I had people blow a 12 and they were found not guilty because it's a two-pronged system. You got to prove that impairment, and you got to prove that that person was behind the wheel when the crash occurred. And hit and runs, for instance, in this case, she could have went home and she could have drank after the motor vehicle crash. I've had that happen, and it went to court, and they got on the stand, and they were nervous, and they drank 4, 5, 6 beers, and I can't prove that they didn't drink after the crash, and bam, not guilty.
right, because she did. They let her leave the scene, and like everybody, the first responders, all the other witnesses, all said, even like whether you're talking about that night or the next morning, they all said she didn't seem drunk. She didn't seem like if they thought she was intoxicated that morning, you'd think they would have arrested her right on the spot. You know what I mean? Or given her a breathalyzer. Or
Well,
it's so funny. They waited till she went back to the hospital to pull her blood. You know what I mean? Like, so.
Well, I think they went through the back door to get a draw of her blood, because I think she may have made some statements, and I've not seen anybody testify to it that that were concerning. Listen, I have never, I guess the laws are different up there, but I've never had anybody committed to the hospital for 3 days or whatever it was. The way it works when you draw blood is you go to a crash, and the EMS is there 99% of the time, and they're loading the person up or they're already gone. So you complete your crash report, and a fireman or somebody may come up and say, man, he or she was drunk as a skunk. So I would drive to the hospital, and a lot of times I would ask the doctor, hey, is it worth is it worth my time drawing blood? Because they already know what the results are, and sometimes they said yes, sometimes they said they wouldn't. I'll give you a prime example. One Sunday afternoon, I had a pickup truck overturned in the middle of the road. Got there, he was already transported to the hospital, and got there. He said, with all due respect, sir, I'm not going to answer any questions. I said, that's fine. I smell alcohol in your breath. You have red glassy eyes. It's my opinion that you're impaired. And I didn't even ask the doctor. So I drew blood, and it came back at a 0.16. He was double the legal limit. So we went to trial. I testified the vehicle, come back to him, the whole 9 yards. As the defense attorney asked me a couple questions, and he stood up and said, "Trooper, did you see my client driving?" "No, sir." "There could have been somebody else driving and they could have ran in the woods." "Yes, sir, that's possible." "Not guilty." So you learn from your mistakes. So what I did was, every time I had a crash where somebody may have been impaired, I got the names of the EMS workers who responded to the scene. Now, they hated to come to court. They hate to come to court. But they got there, they smelled alcohol on their breath, you know, they had red glassy eyes, their speech was slurred. They would come to court and testify, they heard this or they heard that. And a lot of times that helped out in a lot of convictions for DWI. And sometimes it did, because, doctors and EMS workers do not like to go to court. I'm going to tell you that now. They do not like to go to court.
It's not normally part of their job, I'm guessing. Most people don't like to go to court.
Right. And I was telling somebody a couple of years ago, we're talking about, DWI, and I said, 0.08 is the legal limit. And he was like, "Well, man, they're guilty, ain't you?" I said, No. I said, that's only one part of it. They blew 08, but you got to, there's many more factors you have to prove that they were impaired. What I used to do, which sort of pissed off a lot of attorneys, is if I saw the man or woman in court I arrested, I'd say, "Hey, how you doing today?" "I'm doing good." So once I got on the stand, the DA would ask me, "Have you ever talked to the client?" "Yeah, I talked to him the day in court, asked him how he was doing." "Was his speech any different from the time of the crash from the day?" "Absolutely. I could hear him clear today, but at the scene, I couldn't understand a word he was saying."
That is smart. That is it's almost like a reminder when people say, "Don't talk to the police." You're brilliant. I love it. I love it. You gave a lot of advice, I think, today to the defense. Do you think there's any other advice that you would give Karen Reed's defense team if they were watching right now?
Well, I would have a phone expert. I would try to find out the two individuals that butt dialed. I would have a phone expert there to prove that there is no way possible on earth that those phones could not be butt dialed. I would definitely have them there. I would probably subpoena the Massachusetts State Police policy and procedures. And policy and procedures are like the Bible. And I would go through that policy and procedures on investigating a crime scene step by step. And I would point out what they didn't do that they should have done. I would definitely do that. And like I said, I would have a phone expert to prove that there's no way possible without either putting your fingerprint or passcode and then hitting the phone icon that you could call somebody back. And I would definitely have them there. I'm trying to think. I might even would have, and not me, but I would probably have a retired, well-seasoned expert on how to process a crime scene.
Yeah,
Definitely, I would do that.
Yeah, I've been saying that for the longest time, that they need someone that is an expert on crime scenes and, like you said, the policies and procedures, so they can point out step by step what wasn't done correctly.
Well, and something else that really stood out is, all those troopers have cameras in their car, or they have a audio. It would have been so much helpful to have all this stuff on camera when they interviewed every single person versus going to court and I don't remember. Um, and some of the problems I had was, interviewing some of the people at different places. I mean, you can conduct an interview in your patrol car, cut your camera on, and, it's all on tape. That's one of the things I would have done. Had everything on tape, so when it went to trial, all you have to do is replay what they said at the scene, because the first 48 hours of any crime scene, you're going to get more information then versus if you wait a week or two, people are going to lawyer up and people are going to be quiet. People would go out here and run their mouths on the street, but when it comes time to talk to police, they don't want to talk to the police. So you got to take advantage while you've got it there within the first 48 hours and ask them, what time did you get here? Did you see anything out of the ordinary? What happened? And you got it all on tape. So when you get somebody on the stand, they can't keep saying, I don't know, I don't remember. Well, play the tape.
Cool. Absolutely. There was so much wrong with this investigation. I'm so happy that you reached out to us. You commented in the chat the other night, and we were able to do this tonight. This has been a pleasure to speak to you tonight. Again, you're retired North Carolina State Highway Patrol, 14,000 car accidents you responded to. It's amazing. I just thank you for your service. I thank you for everything you've done. But I can imagine all those people that you've helped over the years just responding to calls. And I just thank you for your time tonight and just sharing all your info.
The worst part of the job, and I know you got to go, but the worst part of the job was having to deliver a death notice when somebody's killed in a crash. Because you're fixing to go and you're fixing to change somebody's life and family for the rest of their lives. And in just about, there's really no way in each case to say the same exact thing to a family. When you knock on that door at 3:00 in the morning or whenever, they know something's wrong. And one case that stands out to me, this 18-year-old girl was going to church one Sunday morning, and she ran off the road and she landed in a creek and she passed away. And her family lived 1 mile from where it happened, and they actually drove by it. And me and my supervisor went there around. It happened around, I don't know, maybe 10:00 in the morning. We went about 1:00 and caught them and caught them at home and knocked on the door, and we walked in. And the first thing they said was, "Is everything okay?" And I said, "We really need to talk to you." "Is it about my daughter?" I said, "Ma'am, can you come over here and have a seat?" And I said, "Look, I don't know how to tell you this, but I have to tell you that your daughter was killed in a motor vehicle crash this morning." And she just literally just dropped to her knees. And that's when you have to show compassion to people. Yeah, you got that gun and you got that badge and you think you're Superman, but there's a heart and there's a compassion behind that badge. And, you stay there and you talk to them and you try to console them, and, that you answer any questions they have. And as a matter of fact, that couple actually wrote the governor a letter on me and the sergeant's behalf on how good of a job we done, and to me, that was one of the hardest parts, knowing that I'm fixing to go change somebody's life forever. And everyone that I did was sad. It was a tough job to do, but I signed up to do it, and I had to do it. And we had a chaplain uh, sometimes that would go along with us, and that really helped out a lot, having the chaplain go with us and help comfort the family and all, because it's tough to do. It's tough to do. So not all law enforcement are bad. Did I work with some bad, crooked ones? Yeah. Did they get caught? Yeah. We had 3 or 4 wind up in prison for stupid stuff. But a majority of law enforcement that I dealt with are professional. They take their job seriously. But once again, I worked alone, and the only time I would see them is we meet to go eat or see them at the office or whatever. So I had no idea these individuals were doing the things that they were doing, but they got caught. And to have such a good job, we have one of the best retirements in the country. I mean, I make a tremendous amount of more, not working versus working, because I don't pay into the retirement system. I pay less in taxes. So, you just got to treat people the way you want to be treated. Now, is there times where you have to ratchet up a little bit, where somebody don't want to go to jail or whatever? Yeah, obviously you have to. But, in general, be nice to people, listen to people. The best advice I had was, you go up there and you have somebody a speeding ticket or whatever, and they say, "Trooper, I got a question," and you just walk away. No, you don't walk away. You stand there and answer their question. And that may save you a complaint. Because, you give somebody a ticket, they don't know anything about the court system. The only people that knows anything about the court system is the judge and the attorneys. So, you know, you take that extra minute and you talk to people and you explain to them their options. Then, I'll give you an example. I run in the back of you and I get a ticket for fail to reduce speed. If I get a letter from my insurance company and I go to court, they're going to dismiss the ticket, which means I never got it. So I would tell people, listen, you got a ticket for fail to reduce speed. If you bring a letter from your insurance company, they'll dismiss the ticket, it'll save you $280. Am I required to tell them that? No. But I did that as a courtesy. So it comes down to, you wear the uniform, you got to have a heart, you got to know how to talk to people, you don't talk down to people, you're honest with people, you don't mislead people, and if they have any questions, you answer them.
You are. I mean, I just love how you carry yourself, how you're available to us, just everything you said tonight. It gets me to my last question. I had this question on the list, and I'm glad you've been like a mind reader. Every time I've wanted to bring up something, you've already kind of pre-addressed it. But I have guys I grew up with who are police officers, and a lot of times it's exactly what you said, showing up to these car accidents, these scenes, these horrific scenes. And I think there's a level of PTSD that police officers get, and even like, ambulance, EMTs, first responders, firefighters, where you almost get desensitized to it. You either get desensitized or just drive it like I know from talking to even other police officers, it drives some of them crazy, some of the scenes that they go to and some of the situations that like you're talking about that one, going to the where they lost their daughter. You still remember that. Do you think police officers get enough support mental health support, like you said, a chaplain coming out? Do they actually get enough support, do you think? And what are some of the ways that maybe government or police departments could support the mental health of police officers so they're staying, like you said, they're leading with heart, they're listening, they're treating people as human beings. I mean, you have that. I don't know how you kept it after going to 14,000 car accidents, but somehow you did. I see a lot of police officers maybe don't. They turn it off after a while. They just don't have that human emotion anymore. How do we support police officers so that they have the support? They're not going home. I mean, I know it's going to happen anyways. They're going to go home either way, thinking about that accident, thinking about that kid, thinking about the horrific situation that they left. How do we help them? How do we help them?
Well, on our side, obviously we have a chaplain, but we have our own medical office. And you can go to the medical office if you're having problems, and you can meet with a doctor. Now, the doctor by law does not tell the highway patrol what your problem is. And you can either be put on medication, you can take a leave of absence, and the highway patrol by law, the colonel would not know why you are taking the leave of absence, what the issues you're having. To this day, every once in a while, I'll catch myself, thinking about some of the fatals I had. I mean, you know, any way you can wreck anything I had. And this one, if you got a minute, I'll tell you one that really stands out that I'll never forget.
Definitely. We have time.
Um, I had I was working third shift and hadn't had a call all night. Supposed to get off at 6 in the morning, and at 4:15 they gave me a wreck where a charter bus was on Interstate 95 going from New York to South Carolina, and that's all the information I had. So I get there and I look in the median where the cable wire was, and it was torn down probably 75 or 100 yards. And the bus was in the left lane facing southbound. So I get there, and uh, there was a language barrier. There was only one guy there that could speak English, and I had to get everybody's name, address, everything. Everybody on that bus. There was 45 people on that bus. I had to get all their information. So what happened was the bus was going down the interstate, and to this day, I think he fell asleep. But he ran off the road to the right. He hit the guardrail, and then he ran off the road to the left. And look, this is going to be hard to believe, but it did happen. He ran off the road to the left, went through the median, went through the cable wire. The driver actually fell out of the charter bus, and a guy sitting in the front seat jumped up there behind the wheel and turned the charter bus to the right, went back through the median, and came to rest in the left lane. Well, there was a car going northbound. Instead of hitting the bus, runs off the road to the right and hits a tree. So I didn't even know that had even happened. So as I was investigating that, EMS come over and said there's another vehicle over here. Well, the vehicle going northbound had a man and a woman. Instead of hitting the bus, they run off the road to the right and hit a tree, and the passenger dies. So here I have a bus, 45 people on it. The driver falls out, and he's bad off. And then you got the car around off the road to the right, and you got a fatality with a passenger. So I gather all the information. Now it's about 8 o'clock in the morning. I'm tired, but I've got more investigation to do. So I go to the hospital, and he's pretty much a vegetable. So They don't know if he's going to make it or not. So I called let me say this. Every fatality that I investigate, I don't care if it's 3 o'clock in the morning, we call the district attorney's office and we tell them what we have. We update them on everything we have. So I went and met with the district attorney a couple of days after the crash, and she said, go and charge her with misdemeanor death with motor vehicle. So his mother was from New York. She came down. And even though he's sitting there out of it by law, I'm required to explain the charges to him. Obviously, he's not going to understand, but I still got to explain it to him. So I explained it to his mother. I said, look, he's charged with misdemeanor death, and he has to appear in court. And obviously, he's probably not going to be able to. So you may want to consider an attorney to end up showing up for him. So long story short, he ended up dying, and they dismissed the charges. So that was actually a double fatal. So in cases like that, where you have a delayed fatal, you do a supplement report a month or two, whenever later, and you show that the driver of the bus died. And I'll never forget it, because I was on that scene for 3 or 4 hours. I was at the hospital for 2. I was supposed to get off at 6. I didn't get home till 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Supposed to come out at 3 o'clock, 1 hour. So I got 3 or 4 hours sleep, come out at 6, and continue working on it, and completed a report. And that's one I'll never forget. It was a very, very, very bad crash. Also had 2 teenagers that were going around, and this is something I'd never seen, 2 teenagers going around a curve, and they actually went airborne and got stuck between 2 trees, and they both died instantly. 2 teenagers.
Come out of the car too, or was it the car got it in the tree?
They were in the car, but they were going about 90 miles an hour, and they went airborne, and bam, once they hit that tree, they died instantly, just like that. And we had a time with that because we put crime scene tape up, and people wanting to come across. I'm like, look, you're not going anywhere near this crash scene, and if you come under this crime scene tape, you're going to be arrested. You're not allowed beyond this point. And we had, several people upset, but there's no need for them to go over there. You don't want your last memory of a friend of yours to see their body tore all to pieces.
Oh.
You don't want that last memory.
Oh.
And, I had a wreck where a couple got T-boned and they died instantly. And I asked the medical examiner, I said, how did they die instantly? He said, well, upon impact, the inside of their body, they got hit so hard, it was moved, and they just, bam, died instantly. As a matter of fact, he said, if you want to come up here and watch an autopsy done, just let me know. I'll be happy. I said, no. I don't want to get anywhere near an autopsy. I said, it's tough for me to deal with seeing what I see on the road, but fatalities, you ride by and you see a car tore all to pieces, and people see it all the time. They're like, gosh, that is a bad crash, and there's no way he survived. And man, I've never seen anything like that. It's a regular crash. There's no, I got immune to it. I don't care if the top was cut off or whatever. I got immune to it. I've seen it so much. And you do more paperwork, you take more pictures, you do more measurements, you spend more time on it. But it's just another crash. And you just have to deal with it. Go home, pray for the people, try to get some sleep. Tomorrow's a new day. You're going to have it again, and try to do the best you can do. I never had PTSD, to be honest with you. We did have people that, to answer your question, that did happen, and they would go to the medical office, and the medical doctor would refer them to maybe a psychologist or something like that, or So we have what they call a MAT team, M-A-T. I can't think of what it stands for now, but it's anonymous. If you're having PTSD or problems, you call one of those members up, and you sit down there and you talk to maybe one or two, and all that's confidential. It's all confidential. And you tell them your problems you're having, and they try to help you get through it. And that really helps a lot. So we have the medical office, we have the MAT team, we have the chaplain, we have many, many different places to go if we're having problems or issues. So that's one good thing we have in our agency.
Thank you for being here tonight. It gives a lot of people an insight into what a good police officer is, and also what you guys go through. Because I think there's a lot of controversy about policing, obviously, over the last couple of years, and that's one of the reasons why I think a lot of people don't go into it anymore, like you said. And we need. I really have even myself. I've come a long way with this, because I realize I never really had an issue with individual police officers. I've always had friends who were police officers, but I feel like there are some issues with policing, and a lot of times it's about the corruption. But I think we all need to remember, like, what you're talking about tonight. It's like, I know it, 'cause just talking to my friends that are police officers. These scenes haunt them. It's a tough, really tough job. So I thank you so much for your service as a police officer, and tonight for what you did for Karen Reed, and just for all of us to get to talk to you and listen to you and hear what you have to say, and share that perspective of a good police officer. I really salute you. I think we're going to be friends now. I know that you're keeping your identity a little close to the vest, but I'm really happy that we connected, and I'm really happy you came on our show tonight.
Yeah, and let me end it with this. If you're a corrupt police officer, your day's coming one way or the other. You're going to slip up. You're going to slip up, and you're going to get caught. One way or the other, you're going to get caught. And I've seen it, and I've seen it, and I've seen it. People that think that they wear the gun in the badge. They think that they're untouchable. But trust me, you do it long enough, you're going to get caught. And I've seen it time after time after time after time. When I say get caught doing crooked stuff and stuff you shouldn't be doing, it's all going to come out. Now, there are some that slip through the cracks, but I could sit here and name you over my career 400 or more people that did things that I would never thought that they would have done, and they got caught. And like I said, with any agency, you're going to have some that slip through the cracks. But if they continue to do what they're doing, eventually they're going to get caught. And people that you think are your friends in law enforcement, that's why I wore my bulletproof vest every day. We're required to wear it, but even when we weren't required to wear it, I wore mine because I didn't want to get stabbed in the back by a fellow trooper. And I've seen it. You can't trust nobody. So I'll leave you with this. My best advice to make it 30 years as a law enforcement officer is to mind your business. Don't gossip. Go out and do your job the best you can do. Be fair with people. And that's number one. Be fair with people. I actually stopped an individual, and I'm not going to say who the person was, but this person was very high up about as high as you can go in state government. And this individual was speeding. And then this individual tried to throw some names out. And this individual's worth millions of dollars. I got the individual's license, went back to my patrol car, wrote him a ticket for speeding, took it back up there to him. He went on his way. What's the difference in him and somebody working at McDonald's making $10 an hour? He can afford it a whole lot more than somebody making $8 an hour. And
I mean, I'd say the difference is that person can afford it. Like if I get pulled over today, I haven't been pulled over in so long, but if I actually ever speed, because I drive slow now, but if I ever got pulled over by a police officer to give you a ticket, I'd be like, I can afford it, and I would thank the officer. I would thank you for doing your job, because you know what, like that's protecting people. Speeding kills people. There's no doubt about it.
And one last thing, don't argue beside the road. You're not going to win that battle. You can sit there and argue all you want. Save it for court, because once that ticket is printed off and is transmitted to the court system, I'm not going to tear the ticket up, and I wouldn't do it anyway. Take the ticket, say thank you, sir, because look, I've had people who cuss me up left and right, up and down. I've been called every name in the book 500 times or more. And guess what I did when they did that? I went back in my notes and I put it in all capital letters. Do not dismiss this ticket. See trooper. And they were uncooperative the entire time. See trooper. And when it went to court, I tell the DA, he called me this, he called me that, blah, 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 blah. And hey, it's either you go to trial or you plead guilty to 72 and 55 and you're going to lose your license. So be nice. Be nice. Now, there were times when I'm sitting in the median, say there's two red cars coming down the road, and I'm clocking that car. And you have to lock that speed in. I lock the speed in and I pull out. And, it takes me a few minutes to catch up to them. And I'm looking, where was it? This red car or that red car? And I couldn't decipher it. Guess what I did? I kept driving, because I'm not going to give somebody a ticket that I'm not 100% certain that it wasn't them, because I wouldn't want to be treated that way, or anybody in my family. So when I wrote that ticket, it's 100% certain it was that person, that car. And it all comes back to being ethical, honesty, and doing the right thing.
We all need to be like that, even non-police officers too. Like the biggest thing in life, if you do wrong and you think you're going to get away with it, you're always thinking about, are they going to come knock today? Are they going to show up today? Like you're always worried about it. That's what, like when I was a young kid, when I used to do things wrong, I used to be, you'd spend so much time worrying about getting in trouble.
Right.
Just not worth it. But just better to do the right thing always.
Right. Well, and look, this case is a case where I have never seen things happen in my entire career. And it just, it seems like every single day something new comes out that it honestly really blows my mind. I have never, ever seen anything of this magnitude.
It's a scary situation to live in the state and have this just be out there and nothing being done about it. So,
well, look,
I thank you for being here to speak on it. And
I can tell you this: you won't ever see a North Carolina plate of mine driving through anywhere near Massachusetts. I can promise you that.
You're not coming up for the trial?
No, sir. No, sir. No, sir.
Maybe if we straighten the state out, we can get you to come back here.
Yeah, well, that's going to take. Look, that would
A
take
decade.
years
Yeah.
upon
It's gonna
years.
take a decade. Yeah.
I mean, you know, you're going to have a new governor, a new colonel. You're going to have, you're going to have to clean house, and let law enforcement, you know, you may have to make a few examples out of people to show you mean business. I mean, to me that's the only way that you're going to bring change. I mean, you know, for example, here the colonel's appointed by the governor, so there's a lot of politics involved at the top and in the middle and everywhere else. But I never really, got into politics. And I promise you, this is the last thing I'll say, and I know you got to go. I did get in the promotional system about 10 years ago. Well, my mother was bedridden for 5 years. She couldn't walk. And I had to help take care of her and work. And, that was tough to do. You know, even when I was working, I try to get up there and she had to take so many pills in the morning and here and there and bring her food or whatever. Well, and they got to me on the list and they said, "We're offering you a promotion." I said, "Where's it at?" And he told me the county, and he said, "It's about 5 hours from where you live." He said, "If you look out your front window, it says, 'Welcome to Tennessee.' If you look out your back window, it says, 'Welcome to Georgia.'" I said, "Thanks, but no thanks." I said, "My mother's bedridden, and I sure as hell ain't going to leave her to take a promotion." And he said he understood. And I look back, and I'm glad I didn't, because I was there with my mother when she took her last breath. And she looked at me before she laid back and died. And she said, "I just want you to know I love you. And I did my best to raise you to do the right thing." And I said, "Mama, you did everything you could do, and you raised me to be where I'm at today." And she laid back, and they put an oxygen mask on her, and she never woke up again. So I didn't want to get promoted. I was not going to leave my house 5 hours just to get a 15% raise. My family was more important. And the highway patrol preaches God, family, and then the highway patrol. And sometimes they don't abide by that. It should be uh, they try to make it highway patrol first, and I just won't play in that game with them. So
God, family, and then everything else should be the way it is.
yes,
And
sir. Well,
your mom died proud. I mean, she definitely was. You could tell she was proud of you.
my mother died in July, and then my father died in January. So we had to call in hospice and all that. And, I was having to work, and she had to have her medicine at a certain time, and I'd go up there while I was working, and she would fall sometimes in and out of the hospital, in and out of the nursing home. And I said, they can keep the 15% for the raise. I don't need the money. My family comes first. And, you know, I'm glad I made the decision I made. And I don't regret it one bit. So I did the best I could do. And, I really wish they were here to see me retire, but excuse me.
They're
But
watching. They're watching.
yeah,
Trust me, I know. Been through some similar stuff, and you just in certain moments you feel it. You just know they're still with you.
right,
As long
right.
as you're here, there's a part of them here.
Yeah. Well, look, Mike, just get in touch with me when you want me
Yeah,
to come back, and I'll be more than
definitely.
happy.
Yeah, the audience is loving it. They were all asking for it at the end. They're like, "Please ask him to come back. They love you." So thank you so much. North Carolina, Thank you so much for being here. Retired North Carolina State Highway Patrol. We call him Carolina now. Thank you so much, Carolina. We'll
Yes, sir.
talk soon. Thank you for being here tonight,
Sir, y'all have a good night.
too. God bless you. That was amazing. The way we want cops to be. You could just feel it in him. Tough job. We need less Proctor and Tully and Morrissey and more guys like that. You know? It's so obvious. I gotta fix my camera. My camera's bugging me tonight. It's not perfect, but we'll work on that. There's one more thing to work on here. I want to thank all the super chats. I think I got them up tonight. Sherry, D, Lindsay, Karen Reed's, and I don't even know what that is. No, Karen Reed, not guilty verdict, formerly Darla the Human. Thank you. It's a long one. I love it. I want to thank Michelle. Michelle is a regular. Thank you so much, BSN. RN, Glenn Lake. He's very generous. He buys all the memberships. Thank you so much, Glenn. Again, I want to thank Batty. Decline. Thank you. Hank's Nefarious Nose Scrunch. Thank you. Angie's Wave, excuse me. And M. Jersey Jen. Thank you so much. Bobby Alessi's Butter. I love the screen handles. It's so funny. Sonia, thank you. I wonder if Alessi loves that one. He's probably likes that. He's probably like, yeah, I got people on YouTube with handles named after me. Thank you so much, Bobby. I'm probably missing some. The cat lady, aka the cat lady. Thank you, Connie B. And thank you, D. I keep coming up on Glenn Lake. He's done so many YouTube memberships tonight. Make sure you're thanking Glenn in the chat for all the new memberships tonight. And Sarah and Shock and Horror, she always does them as well. I want to thank our moderators. I saw MJ in there in the chat. I saw, who else did I see? Stephanie, she's amazing. Sarah Shock and Horror, Jen O, Scott McGinnis. We have the best mod team around. We really do. I say it a lot because it's true. Sherry D says, baby jerk arrival. Love Michael's show. Thank you so much, Sherry D. All right. See, I'm not happy with the camera angle tonight. The camera, funny, I had it taped up with scotch tape because the real tape on the camera wasn't working. And I thought it worked, and then today it's kind of leaning over to the side. I gotta get a real tripod for it. Wednesday, no, Wednesday. What am I talking about? Well, Wednesday, Turtle Boy's going to be in court for his motion for dismissal. Karen Reed's also going to be in court. I think Tuesday, Wednesday, and Friday, I believe it is. So this week's a big week in terms of court. Going to be doing a lot more shows this week. Definitely, I've been doing a lot of shows as it is. Going to continue on that. I'm not sure when the next show is. I'm not sure if it's going to be Saturday or Sunday. Just make sure you subscribe to us and you're checking in daily because I have a feeling I may do a Saturday or a Sunday show. Definitely, actually, I'm doing a Sunday daytime show, but I'm talking about Saturday and Sunday night. I've got a daytime show. I think it's like at 12:45. I'll have to check the exact time. We haven't announced it yet. We haven't posted, but we will. It's going to be with attorney Dan Gallagher back on the show. So that's on Sunday early. Make sure you check that show out. Monday night, we're supposed to be interviewing the state senator with former retired Mass State Police Todd McGee and my man Ryan from LTL. That should be a big show on Monday night at 6 p.m. Tuesday, I believe, is the Canton Select Board. And again, I'm going to be booking a lot of guests. So make sure you subscribe and check in with us. I want to thank all of our viewers, everyone who supports us. I really appreciate you all. And I want to thank that guest tonight. He was phenomenal. He's exactly what we want in police. And I'm just trying to check the Venmos. I know that something did come in. Let me just make sure I got it. Mhm. Venmo, I want to thank Tara. Tara sent $10 and she said, keep up the good fight. You are one of my favorite streamers. Love, stay healthy in mind, body, and soul. Thank you so much, Tara. Really appreciate that. I also had a donation recently from Ann. I think I did thank her the other night. She said, thank you for you from upstate New York. She said she left a voicemail. I think I got all those. Cool. Did thank John the other night, John M, for a great show. He said $12 the other night. Free Karen Reed and free Turtle Boy. Yeah, that Turtle Boy show was great. If you haven't listened to that, check that out. I really did enjoy having Aiden Carney back on the show. I thought it was a very good interview. I think he was phenomenal. He went through all the his court dismissal document. That was a great show. If you haven't listened to it, definitely check it out. I gotta have him back more often. He's really good. He's a good guest. I just don't like to ask him too much because he's got his own show and he's in high demand and he's also facing all these felony indictments. But the show we did the other night is a reminder. I definitely need to try to keep him coming back, keep asking him a little more. He always says yes, so that's the key. I don't like to over ask people. Funny. FKR 2024. Amazing show, Mike. I think we learned that Mass really needs to restructure the entire organization. Yeah, the Mass State Police really. I mean, when you listen to the highway patrolman tonight, North Carolina does it way better. That's exactly what we should be doing in Massachusetts is looking at what other states are doing better, especially with the state police. And having state police embedded with DA's office does not seem like a smart thing. Having them embedded with RMVs doesn't seem like a smart thing. There's a lot that could go wrong. And I would even, look at the Sandra Birchmore with the Police Explorer programs. If I was a local town, I would be very wary of police explorer programs in the local schools. And if you are going to do that, it has to have much more oversight, in my opinion. Very thankful for our friend, the retired North Carolina State Highway Patrol tonight. Looking forward to speaking to him some more. Great resource for us. Thank him for so much for coming on tonight, sharing all his stories. And thank you all for watching us. We'll see you next time. Have a great night, everyone. If you haven't, please like and subscribe on the way out. Have a great night, everyone. Thank you so much.